आज से सब सीखने मंडे थे। वहाँ अस्पृश्यता ऐसी कोई चीज नहीं रहने वाली है। और ऐसे वो कुएं हैं, वहां से वो पानी भी भर सकते हैं। ऐसी सब बातें उसमें लिखी है। तो before you discuss the resolution, let me place before you one or two things. I want you to understand two things very clearly and to consider them from the same point of view from which I am placing them before you. I ask you to consider it from my point of view, because if you approve of it, you will be enjoined to carry out all I say. It will be a great responsibility. There are people who ask me whether I am the same man that I was in 1920 or whether there has been any change in me. You are right in asking that question. Let me, however, hasten to assure that I am the same Gandhi as I was in 1920. I have not changed in any fundamental respect. I attach the same importance to nonviolence that I give them. If at all, my emphasis on it has grown stronger. There is no real contradiction between the present resolution and my previous writings and utterances. Occasions like the present do not occur in everybody's and but rarely in anybody's life. I want you to know and feel that there is nothing but purest ahimsa in all that I am saying and doing today. The draft resolution of the Working Committee is based on ahimsa. The contemplated struggle similarly has its roots in ahimsa. If, therefore, there is any among you who has lost faith in ahimsa or is wearied of it, let him not vote for this resolution. Let me explain my position clearly. God has vouchsafed to me a priceless gift in the weapon of ahimsa. I and my ahimsa are on our trail today. If in the present crisis, when the earth is being scorched by the flames of hymns to and crying for deliverance, I fail to make use of the God-given talent, God will not forgive me, and I shall be judged unwrongly of the great gift. I must act now. I may not hesitate and merely look on when Russia and China are threatened. Ours is not a drive for power, but purely a non-violent fight for India's independence. In a violent struggle, a successful general has been often known to effect a military coup and to set up a dictatorship. But under the Congress scheme of things, essentially non-violent as it is, there can be no room for dictatorship. A non-violent soldier of freedom will covet nothing for himself. He fights only for the freedom of his country. The Congress is unconcerned as to who will rule when freedom is attained. The power, when it comes, will belong to the people of India, and it will be for them to decide to whom its place can be entrusted. Maybe that the reins will be placed in the hands of the Parsis, for instance, as I would love to see happen, or they may be handed to some others whose names are not heard in the Congress today. It will not be for you then to object, saying this community is microscopic. That party did not play its due part in the freedom struggle. Why should it have all the power? Ever since its inception, the Congress has kept itself meticulously free of the communal taint. It has thought always in terms of the whole nation and has acted accordingly. I know how imperfect our ahimsa is and how far away we are still from the ideal. But in ahimsa, there is no final failure or defeat. I have faith, therefore, that if, in spite of our shortcomings, the big thing does happen, it will be because God wanted to help us by crowning with success our silent, unremitting Sadhana One for the last 22 years. I believe that in the history of the world, there has not been a more genuinely democratic struggle for freedom than ours. I read Carlyle's French Resolution while I was in prison, and Pandit Jawaharlal has told me something about the Russian Revolution. But it is my conviction that inasmuch as these struggles were fought with the weapon of violence, they failed to realize the democratic ideal. In the democracy which I have envisaged, a democracy established by nonviolence, there will be equal freedom for all. Everybody will be his own master. It is to join a struggle for such democracy that I invite you today. Once you realize this, you will forget the differences between the Hindus and Muslims and think of yourselves as Indians only, engaged in the common struggle for independence. Then there is the question of your attitude towards the British. I have noticed that there is hatred towards the British among the people. The people say they are disgusted with their behavior. The people make no distinction between British imperialism and the British people. To them, the two are one. This hatred would even make them welcome the Japanese. It is most dangerous. It means that they will exchange one slavery for another. We must get rid of this feeling. Our quarrel is not with the British people. We fight their imperialism. The proposal for the withdrawal of British power did not come out of anger. It came to enable India to play its due part at the present critical juncture. It is not a happy position for a big country like India to be merely helping with money and material obtained willy-nilly from her, while the United Nations are conducting the war. We cannot evoke the true spirit of sacrifice and valor so long as we are not free. I know the British government will not be able to withhold freedom from us when we have made enough self-sacrifice. We must, therefore, purge ourselves of hatred. Speaking for myself, I can say that I have never felt any hatred. As a matter of fact, I feel myself to be a greater friend of the British now than ever before. One reason is that they are today in distress. My very friendship, therefore, demands that I should try to save them from their mistakes. As I view the situation, they are on the brink of an abyss. It, therefore, becomes my duty to warn them of their danger, even though it may, for the time being, anchor them to the point of cutting off the friendly hand that is stretched out to help them. People may laugh. Nevertheless, that is my claim. At a time when I may have to launch the biggest struggle of my life, I may not harbor hatred against anybody. I congratulate you on the resolution that you have just passed. I also congratulate the Sleep comrades on the courage they have shown in pressing their amendments to a division, even though they knew that there was an overwhelming majority in favor of the resolution. And I congratulate the 13 friends who voted against the resolution. In doing so, they have nothing to be ashamed of. For the last 20 years, we have tried to learn not to lose courage even when we are in a hopeless minority and are laughed at. We have learned to hold on to our beliefs in the confidence that we are in the right. It behaves us to cultivate this courage of conviction, for he ennobles man and raises his moral stature. I was therefore glad to see that these friends had imbibed the principle which I have tried to follow for the last 50 years and more. Having congratulated them on their courage, let me say that what they asked this committee to accept through their amendments was not the correct representation of the situation. These friends ought to have pondered over the appeal made to them by the Maulana to withdraw their amendments. They should have carefully followed the explanations given by Jawaharlal. Had they done so, it would have been clear to them that the right which they now want the Congress to concede has already been conceded by the Congress. Time was when every Mussulman claimed the whole of India as his motherland. During the years that the Ali brothers were with me, the assumption underlying all their talks and discussions was that India belonged as much to the Mussulmans as to the Hindus. I can testify to the fact that this was their innermost conviction and Noram Lahask. I lived with them for years. I spent days and nights in their company, and I make bold to say that their utterances were the honest expression of their beliefs. I know there are some who say that I take things too readily at their face value, that I am gullible. I do not think I am such a simpleton, nor am I so gullible as these friends take me to be. But their criticism does not hurt me. I should prefer to be considered gullible, rather deceitful. What these communist things propose through their amendments is nothing new. It has been repeated from thousands of platforms. Thousands of Muslims have told me that if Hindu-Muslim question was to be solved satisfactorily, it must be done in my lifetime. I should feel flattered at this. But how can I agree to a proposal which does not appeal to my reason? Hindu-Muslim unity is not a new thing. Millions of Hindus and Muslims have sought after it. I consciously strove for its achievement from my boyhood. While at school, I made it a point to cultivate the friendship of Muslims and Farsi co-students. I believed even at that tender age that the Hindus in India, if they wished to live in peace and amity with the other communities, should assiduously cultivate the virtue of neighborliness. It did not matter, I felt, if I made no special effort to cultivate the friendship with Hindus, but I must make friends with at least a few Muslims. It was as counsel for a Muslim merchant that I went to South Africa. I made friends with other Muslims there, even with the opponents of my client, and gained a reputation for integrity and good faith. I had among my friends and co-workers Muslims as well as Parsi. I captured their hearts, and when I left finally for India, I left them sad and shedding tears of grief at the separation. In India, too, I continued my efforts and left no stone unturned to achieve that unity. It was my lifelong aspiration for it that made me offer my fullest cooperation to the Muslims in the Khilafat movement. Muslims throughout the country accepted me as their true friend. How then is it that I have now come to be regarded as so evil and detestable? Had I any axe to grind in supporting the Khilafat movement? True, I did, in my heart of hearts, cherish a hope that it might enable me to save the cow. I am a worshiper of the cow. I believe the cow and myself to be the creation of the same God, and I am prepared to sacrifice my life in order to save the cow. But whatever my philosophy of life and my ultimate hopes, I joined the movement in no spirit of bargain. I cooperated in the struggle for the Khilafat solely on order to discharge my obligation to my neighbor, who I saw was in distress. The Ali brothers, had they been alive today, would have testified to the truth of this assertion. And so, with many others, bear me out in that it was not a bargain on my part for saving the cow. The cow, like the Khilafat, stood on her own merits. As an honest man, a true neighbor, and a faithful friend, it was incumbent on me to stand by the Muslims in the hour of their trial. In those days, I shocked the Hindus. I deem in time they have now got used to it. Maulana Bari told me, however, that through he would not allow me dine with him, lest someday he should be accused of a sinister motive. And so, whenever I had occasion to stay with him, he called a Brahmana cook and made social arrangements for separate cooking. Firandi, Mahal, his residence, was an old-styled structure with limited accommodation, yet he cheerfully bore all hardships and carried out his resolve from which I could not dislodge him. It was the spirit of courtesy, dignity, and nobility that inspired us in those days. They respected one another's religious feelings and considered it a privilege to do so. Not a trace of suspicion lurked in anybody's heart. Where has all that dignity, that nobility of spirit disappeared now? I should ask all Mussulmans, including Quaid-e-Azam Jinnah, to recall those glorious days and to find out what has brought us to the present impasse. Quaid-e-Azam Jinnah himself was at one time a congressman. If today the Congress has incurred his wrath, it is because the canker of suspicion has entered his heart. May God bless him with long life. But when I am gone, he will realize and admit that I had no designs on Mussulmans and that I have never betrayed their interests. Where is the escape for me if I injure their cause or betray their interests? My life is entirely at their disposal. They are free to put an end to it whenever they wish to do so. Assaults have been made on my life in the past, but God has spared me till now, and the assailants have repented for their action. But if someone were to shoot me in the belief that he was getting rid of a rascal, he would kill not the real Gandhi, but the one that appeared to him a rascal. To those who have been indulging in a campaign of abuse and vilification, I would say, Islam enjoins you not to revile even an enemy. The Prophet treated even enemies with kindness and tried to win them over by his fairness and generosity. Are you followers of that Islam or of any other? If you are followers of the true Islam, does it behave you to distrust the words of one who makes a public declaration of his faith? You may take it from me that one day you will regret the fact that you distrusted and killed one who was a true and devoted friend of yours. It cuts me to the quick to see that the more I appeal and the more the Maulana importunes, the more intense does the campaign of vilification grow. To me, these abuses are like bullets. They can kill me, even as a bullet can put an end to my life. You may kill me. That will not hurt me. But what of those who indulge in abusing? They bring discredit to Islam. For the fair name of Islam, I appeal to you to resist this unceasing campaign of abuse and vilification. Maulana Sahib is being made a target for the filthiest abuse. Why? Because he refuses to exert on me the pressure of his friendship. He realizes that it is a misuse of friendship to seek up, to compel a friend to accept his truth, what he knows is an untruth. To the Quaid-Azam, I would say, whatever is true and valid in the claim for Pakistan is already in your hands. What is wrong and untenable is in nobody's gift, so that it can be made over to you. Even if someone were to succeed in imposing an untruth on others, he would not be able to enjoy for long the fruits of such a coercion. God dislikes pride and keeps away from it. God would not tolerate a forcible imposition of an untruth. The Quaid-Azam says that he is compelled to say bitter things, but that he cannot help giving expression to his thoughts and his feelings. Similarly, I would say, I consider myself a friend of Mussalmans. Why should I then not give expression to the things nearest to my heart, even at the cost of displeasing them? How can I conceal my innermost thoughts from them? I should congratulate the Quaid-e-Azam on his frankness in giving expression to his thoughts and feelings, even if they sound bitter to his hearers. But even so, why should the Mussalmans sitting here be reviled if they do not see eye to eye with him? If millions of Mussalmans are with you, can you not afford to ignore the handful of Mussalmans who may appear to you to be misguided? Why should one with the following of several millions be afraid of a majority community or of the minority being swamped by the majority? How did the Prophet work among the Arabs and the Muslims? How did he propagate Islam? Did he say he would propagate Islam only when he commanded a majority? I appeal to you for the sake of Islam to ponder over what I say. There is neither fair play nor justice in saying that the Congress must accept a thing even if it does not believe in it and even if it goes counter to principles it holds dear. The judge said, I do not believe in Pakistan, but Mussalmans ask for it, Mr. Jinnah asks for it, and it has become an obsession with them. Why not then say yes to them just now? The same Mr. Jinnah will later on realize the disadvantages of Pakistan and will forgo the demand. I said, it is not fair to accept as true a thing which I hold to be untrue, and to ask others to do, say in the belief that the demand will not be pressed when the time comes for settling in finally. If I hold the demand to be just, I should conceive it this very day. I should not agree to it merely in order to placate Jinnah Sahib. Many friends have come and asked me to agree to it for the time being to placate Mr. Jinnah, disarm his suspicious, and to see how he reacts to it. But I cannot be party to a course of action with a false promise. At any rate, it is not my method. The Congress has no sanction but the moral one for enforcing its decisions. It believes that true democracy can only be the outcome of nonviolence. The structure of a world federation can be raised only on a foundation of nonviolence, and violence will have to be totally abjured from world affairs. If this is true, the solution of Hindu-Muslim question too cannot be achieved by a resort to violence. If the Hindus tyrannize over the Muslims, with what face will they talk of a world federation? It is for the same reason that I do not believe in the possibility of establishing world peace through violence as the English and American statesmen propose to do. The Congress has agreed to submitting all the differences to an impartial international tribunal and to abide by its decisions. If even this fairest of proposals is unacceptable, the only course that remains open is that of the sword, of violence. How can I persuade myself to agree to an impossibility? To demand the vivisection of a living organism is to ask for its very life. It is a call to war. The Congress cannot be party to such a fratricidal war. Those Hindus who, like Dr. Munjay and Sri Savarkar, believe in the doctrine of the sword may seek to keep the Muslims under Hindus' domination. I do not represent that section. I represent the Congress. You want to kill the Congress, which is the goose that lays golden eggs. If you distrust the Congress, you may rest assured that there is to be perpetual war between the Hindus and the Muslims, and the country will be doomed to continue warfare and bloodshed. If such warfare is to be our lot, I shall not live to witness it. It is for that reason that I say to Jinnah Sahib, you may take it from me that whatever in your demand for Pakistan accords with considerations of justice and equity is lying in your pocket. Whatever in the demand is contrary to justice and equity, you can take only by the sword and in no other manner. There is much in my heart that I would like to pour out before this assembly. One thing which was uppermost in my heart I have already dealt with. You may take it from me that it is with me a matter of life and death. If we Hindus and Muslims mean to achieve a heart unity without the slightest mental reservation on the part of either, we must first unite in the effort to be free from the shackles of this empire. If Pakistan, after all, is to be a portion of India, what objection can there be for Muslims against joining the struggle for India's freedom? The Hindus and Muslims must therefore unite in the first instance on the issue of fighting for freedom. Jinnah Sahib thinks the war will last long. I do not agree with him. If the war goes on for 6 months more, how shall we be able to save China? I, therefore, want freedom immediately, this very night, before dawn, if it can be had. Freedom cannot now wait for the realization of communal unity. If that unity is not achieved, sacrifices necessary for it will have to be much greater than would have otherwise sufficed. But the Congress must win freedom or be wiped out in the effort. And forget not that the freedom which the Congress is struggling to achieve will not be for the congressmen alone, but for all the 40 crores of the Indian people. Congressmen must forever remain humble servants of the people. The Quaid-e-Azam has said that the Muslim League is prepared to take over the rule from the Britishers if they are prepared to hand it over to the Muslim League, for the British took over the empire from the hands of the Muslims. This, however, will be Muslim Raj. The offer made by Maulana Sahib and by me does not imply establishment of Muslim Raj or Muslim domination. The Congress does not believe in the domination of any group or any community. It believes in democracy, which includes in its orbit Muslims, Hindus, Christians, Parsis, Jews, every one of the communities inhabiting this vast country. If Muslim Raj is inevitable, then let it be. But how can we give it the stamp of our assent? How can we agree to the domination of one community over the others? Millions of Muslims in this country come from Hindu stock. How can their homeland be any other than India? My eldest son embraced Islam some years back. What would his homeland be for Bandar or the Punjab? I asked the Muslims, if India is not your homeland, what other country do you belong to? In what separate homeland would you put my son who embraced Islam? His mother wrote him a letter after his conversion, asking him if he had, on embracing Islam, given up drinking, which Islam forbids to its follower. To those who gloated over the conversion, she wrote to say, I do not mind his becoming a Muslim so much as his drinking. Rear you as pious Muslims, tolerate his drinking even after his conversion. He has reduced himself to the state of a rake by drinking. If you are going to make a man of him again, his conversion will have been turned to good account. You will, therefore, please see that he, as a Mussulman, abjures wine and woman. If that change does not come about, his conversion goes in vain, and our non-cooperation with him will have to continue. India is without doubt the homeland of all the Muslims inhabiting this country. Every Muslim should therefore cooperate in the fight for India's freedom. The Congress does not belong to any one class or community. It belongs to the whole nation. It is open to Muslims to take possession of the Congress. They can, if they like, swamp the Congress by their numbers and can steer it along the course which appeals to them. The Congress is fighting not on behalf of the Hindu, but on behalf of the whole nation, including the minorities. It would hurt me to hear of a single instance of a Musalman being killed by a congressman. In the coming revolution, congressmen will sacrifice their lives in order to protect the Musalman against the Hindu's attack and vice versa. It is a part of their creed and is one of the essentials of nonviolence. You will be accepted on occasions like these not to lose your heads. Every congressman, whether a Hindu or a Musalman, owes this duty to the organization, to which will render a service to Islam. Mutual trust is essential for success in the final nationwide struggle that is to come. I have said that much greater sacrifice will have to be made this time in the wake of our struggle because of the opposition from the Muslim League, and from Englishmen. You have seen the secret circular issued by Sir Frederick Puckle. It is a suicidal course that he has taken. It contains an open incitement to organizations which crop up like mushrooms to combine to fight the Congress. We have thus to deal with an empire whose ways are crooked. Ours is a straight path which we can tread even with our eyes closed. That is the beauty of Satyagraha. In Satyagraha, there is no place for fraud or falsehood or any kind of untruth. Fraud and untruth today are stalking the world. I cannot be a helpless witness to such a situation. I have traveled all over India, as perhaps nobody in the present age has. The voiceless millions of the land saw in me their friend and representative, and I identified myself with them to an extent it was possible for a human being to do. I saw trust in their eyes, which I now want to turn to good account in fighting this empire upheld on untruth and violence. However gigantic the preparations that the empire has made, we must get out of its clutches. How can I remain silent at this supreme hour and hide my light under the busho? Shall I ask the Japanese to tarry a while? If today I sit quiet and inactive, God will take me to task for not using up the treasure he had given me in the midst of the conflagration that is enveloping the whole world. Had the condition been different, I should have asked you to wait yet a while. But the situation now has become intolerable, and the Congress has no other course left for it. Nevertheless, the actual struggle does not commence this moment. You have only placed all your powers in my hands. I will now wait upon the Viceroy and plead with him for the acceptance of the Congress demand. That process is likely to take 2 or 3 weeks. What would you do in the meanwhile? What is the program for the interval in which all can participate? As you know, the spinning wheel is the first thing that occurs to me. I made the same answer to the Maulana. He would have none of it, though he understood its import later. The 14-fold constructive program is, of course, there for you to carry out. What more should you do? I will tell you. Every one of you should, from this moment onwards, consider yourself a free man or woman and act as if you are free and are no longer under the heel of this imperialism. It is not a make-believe that I am suggesting to you. It is the very essence of freedom. The bond of the slave is snapped the moment he considered himself to be a free being. He will plainly tell the master, I was your bondslave till this moment, but I am a slave no longer. You may kill me if you like, but if you keep me alive, I wish to tell you that if you release me from the bondage of your own accord, I will ask for nothing more from you. You used to feed and clothe me, though I could have provided food and clothing for myself by my labor. I hitherto depended on you instead of on God for food and raiment. But God has now inspired me with an urge for freedom, and I am today a free man and will no longer depend on you. You may take it from me that I am not going to strike a bargain with the Viceroy for ministries and the like. I'm not going to be satisfied with anything short of complete freedom. Maybe he will propose the abolition of salt tax, the drink evil, etc. But I will say, nothing less than freedom. Here is a mantra, a short one, that I give you. You may imprint it on your hearts and let every breath of yours give expression to it. The mantra is, do or die. We shall either free India or die in the attempt. We shall not live to see the perpetuation of our slavery. Every true congressman or woman will join the struggle with an inflexible determination not to remain alive to see the country in bondage and slavery. Let that be your pledge. Keep jails out of your consideration. If the government keep me free, I will not put on the government the strain of maintaining a large number of prisoners at a time when it is in trouble. Let every man and woman live every moment of his or her life hereafter in the consciousness that he or she eats or lives for achieving freedom and will die, if need be, to retain that goal. Take a pledge with God and your own conscience as witness that you will no longer rest till freedom is achieved and will be prepared to lay down your lives in the attempt to achieve it. He who loses his life will gain it. He who will seek to save it shall lose it. Freedom is not for the coward or the faint-hearted. A word to the journalist. I congratulate you on the support you have hitherto given to the national demand. I know the restrictions and handicaps under which you have to labor, but I would now ask you to snap the chains that bind you. It should be the proud privilege of the newspapers to lead and set an example in laying down one's life for freedom. You have the pen which the government can't suppress. I know you have large properties in the form of printing presses, etc., and you would be afraid lest the government should attach them. I do not ask you to invite an attachment of the printing press voluntarily. For myself, I would not suppress my pen, even if the press was to be attached. As you know, my press was attached in the past and returned later on, but I do not ask from you that final sacrifice. I suggest a middle way. You should now wind up your standing committee, and you may declare that you will give up the pen only when India has won her freedom. You may tell Sir Frederick Puckle that he can't accept from you a command performance, that his press notes are full of untruth, and that you will refuse to publish them. You will openly declare that you are wholeheartedly with the Congress. If you do this, you will have changed the atmosphere before the fight actually begins. From the princes I ask with all respect, due to them a very small thing. I am a well-wisher of the princes. I was born in a state. My grandfather refused to salute with his right hand any prince other than his own. But he did not say to the prince, as I felt he ought to have said, that even his own master could not compel him, his minister, to act against his conscience. I have eaten the prince's salt, and I would not be false to it. As a faithful servant, it is my duty to warn the princes that if they will act while I am still alive, the princes may come to occupy an honorable place in free India. In Jawaharlal's scheme of free India, no privileges or the privileged classes have a place. Jawaharlal considers all property to be state-owned. He wants planned economy. He wants to reconstruct India according to plan. He likes to fly. I do not. I have kept a place for the princes and the zamindars when in India that I envisage. I would ask the princes in all humility to enjoy through renunciation. The princes may renounce ownership over their properties and become their trustees in the true sense of the term. I visualize God in the assemblage of people. The princes may say to the people, you are the owners and masters of the state, and we are your servants. I would ask the princes to become servants of the people and render to them an account of their own services. The empire too bestows power on the princes, but they should prefer to derive power from their own people. And if they want to indulge in some innocent pleasures, they may seek to do so as servants of the people. I do not want the princes to live as paupers, but I would ask them, do you want to remain slaves for all time? Why should you, instead of paying homage to a foreign power, not accept the sovereignty of your own people. You may write to the political department, the people are now awake. How are we to withstand an avalanche before which even the large empire are crumbling? We, therefore, shall belong to the people from today onwards. We shall sink or swim with them. Believe me, there is nothing unconstitutional in the course I am suggesting. There are, so far as I know, no treaties enabling the empire to coerce the princes. The people of the states will also declare that though they are the prince's subjects, they are part of the Indian nation, and that they will accept the leadership of the princes. If the latter cast their lot with the people, the latter will meet death bravely and unflinchingly, but will not go back on their word. Nothing, however, should be done secretly. This is an open rebellion. In this struggle, secrecy is a sin. A free man would not engage in a secret movement. It is likely that when you gain freedom, you will have a CID of your own, in spite of my advice to the contrary. But in the present struggle, we have to work openly and to receive bullets on our chest without taking to heels. I have a word to say to government servants also. They may not, if they like, resign their posts yet. The late Justice Renaud did not resign his post, but he openly declared that he belonged to the Congress. He said to the government that though he was a judge, he was a congressman and would openly attend the sessions of the Congress, but that at the same time he would not let his political views warp his impartiality on the bench. He held social reform conference in the very pandalon of the Congress. I would ask all the government servants to follow in the footsteps of Renaud and to declare their allegiance to the Congress as an answer to the secret circular issued by Sir Frederick Puckle. This is all that I ask of you just now. I will now write to the Viceroy. You will be able to read the correspondence not just now, but when I publish it with the Viceroy's consent. But you are free to aver that you support a demand to be put forth in my letter. A judge came to me and said, we get secret circulars from high quarters. What are we to do? I replied, if I were in your place, I would ignore the circulars. You may openly say to the government, I have received your secret circular. I am, however, with the Congress. Though I serve the government for my livelihood, I'm not going to obey these secret circulars or to employ underhand methods. Soldiers, too, are covered by the present program. I do not ask them just now to resign their posts and to leave the army. The soldiers come to me, Jawaharlal and the Maulana, and say, we are wholly with you. We are tired of the governmental tyranny. To these soldiers, I would say, you may say to the government, our hearts are with the Congress. We are not going to leave our posts. We will serve you so long as we receive your salaries. We will obey your just orders, but will refuse to fire on our own people. To those who lack the courage to do this much, I have nothing to say. They will go their own way. But if you can do this much, you may take it from me that the whole atmosphere will be electrified. Let the government then shower bombs, if they like. But no power on earth will then be able to keep you in bondage any longer. If the students want to join the struggle only to go back to their studies after a while, I would not invite them to it. For the present, however, till the time that I frame a program for the struggle, I would ask the students to say to their professors, we belong to the Congress. Do you belong to the Congress or to the government? If you belong to the Congress, you need not vacate your posts. You will remain at your posts, but teach us and lead us unto freedom. In all fights for freedom the world over, the students have made very large contributions. If in the interval that is left to us before the actual fight begins, you do even the little I have suggested to you, you will have changed the atmosphere and will have prepared the ground for the next step. There is much I should like to say, but my heart is heavy. I have already taken up much of your time. I have yet to say a few words in English also. I thank you for the patience and attention with which you have listened to me even at this late hour. It is just what true soldiers would do. For the last 22 years, I have controlled my speech and pen and have stored up my energy. He is a true brahmachari, one who does not fritter away his energy. He will, therefore, always control his speech. That has been my conscious effort all these years. But today the occasion has come when I had to unburden my heart before you. I have done so, even though it meant putting a strain on your patience, and I do not regret having done it. I have given you my message, and through you I have delivered it to the whole of India. I have taken such an inordinately long time over pouring out what was agitating my soul to those whom I had just now the privilege of serving. I have been called their leader, or in the military language, their commander. But I do not look at my position in that light. I have no weapon but love to wield my authority over anyone. I do sport a stick which you can break into bits without the slightest exertion. It is simply my staff with the help of which I walk. Such a cripple is not elated when he has been called upon to bear the greatest burden. You can share that burden only when I appear before you, not as your commander, but as a humble servant, and he who serves best is the chief among equals. Therefore, I was bound to share with you such thoughts as were welling up in my breast and tell you, in as summary a manner as I can, what I accept you to do as the first step. Let me tell you at the outset that the real struggle is not commenced today. I have yet to go through much ceremonial, as I always do. The burden, I confess, would be almost unbearable. I have to continue to reason in those circles with whom I have lost my credit and who have no trust left in me. I know that in the course of the last few weeks I have forfeited my credit with a large number of friends, so much so that they have begun to doubt not only my wisdom, but even my honesty. Now I hold my wisdom is not such a treasure which I cannot afford to lose, but my honesty is a precious treasure to me, and I can ill afford to lose it. I seem, however, to have lost it for the time being. Such occasions arise in the life of the man who is a pure seeker after truth, and who would seek to serve the humanity and his country to the best of his lights without fear or hypocrisy. For the last 50 years, I have known no other way. I have been a humble servant of humanity and have rendered on more than one occasion such services as I could to the empire. And here let me say without fear of challenge that throughout my career, never have I asked for any personal favor. I have enjoyed the privilege of friendship as I enjoy it today with Lord Linlithgow. It is a friendship which has outgrown official relationship. Whether Lord Linlithgow will bear me out, I do not know, but there is a personal bond between him and myself. He once introduced me to his daughter. His son-in-law, the ADC, was drawn towards me. He fell in love with Mahadev more than with me and Lady Anna, and he came to me. She is an obedient and favorite daughter. I take interest in their welfare. I take the liberty to give out these personal and sacred tidbits only to give you an earnest of the personal bond will never interfere with the stubborn struggle on which, if it falls to my lot, I may have to launch against Lord Linlithgow as the representative of the empire. I will have to resist the might of that empire with the might of the dumb millions, with no limit but of nonviolence as policy confined to this struggle. It is a terrible job to have to offer resistance to a viceroy with whom I enjoy such relations. He has more than once trusted my word, often about my people. I would love to repeat that experiment, as it stands to his credit. I mention this with great pride and pleasure. I mention it as an earnest of my desire to be true to the empire when that empire forfeited my trust, and the Englishman who was its viceroy came to know it. Then there is the sacred memory of Charlie Andrews, which wells up within me. At this moment, the spirit of Andrews hovers about me. For me, he sums up the brightest traditions of English culture. I enjoyed closer relations with him than with most Indians. I enjoyed his confidence. There were no secrets between us. We exchanged our hearts every day. Whatever was in his heart, he would blurt out without the slightest hesitation or reservation. It is true, he was a friend of Guru Devan, but he looked upon Guru Dev with awe. He had that peculiar humility. But with me, he became the closest friend. Years ago, he came to me with a note of introduction from Gokhale. Pearson and he were the first-rank specimens of Englishmen. I know that his spirit is listening to me. Then I have got a warm letter of congratulations from the Metropolitan of Calcutta. I hold him to be a man of God. Today, he is opposed to me. With all this background, I want to declare to the world, although I may have forfeited the regard of many things in the West, and I must bow my head low, but even for their friendship or love, I must not suppress the voice of conscience, promoting of my inner basic nature today. There is something within me impelling me to cry out my agony. I have known humanity. I have studied something of psychology. Such a man knows exactly what it is. I do not mind how you describe it. That voice within tells me, you have to stand against the whole world, although you may have to stand alone. You have to stare in the face the whole world, although the world may look at you with bloodshot eyes. Do not fear. Trust the little voice residing within your heart. It says, forsake things, wife and all, but testify to that for which you have lived and for which you have to die. I want to live my full span of life. And for me, I put my span of life at 120 years. By that time, India will be free. The world will be free. Let me tell you that I do not regard England, or for that matter, America, as free countries. They are free after their own fashion, free to hold in bondage colored races of the earth. Are England and America fighting for the liberty of these races today? If not, do not ask me to wait until after the war. You shall not limit my concept of freedom. The English and American teachers, their history, their magnificent poetry, have not said that you shall not broaden the interpretation of freedom. And according to my interpretation of that freedom, I am constrained to say they are strangers to that freedom which their teachers and poets have described. If they will know the real freedom, they should come to India. They have to come not with pride or arrogances, but in the spite of real earnest seekers of truth. It is a fundamental truth which India has been experimenting with for 22 years. Unconsciously from its very foundations long ago, the Congress has been building on nonviolence, known as constitutional methods. Dadabhai and Feral Sisha, who had held the Congress India in the palm of their hands, became rebels. They were lovers of the Congress. They were its masters. But above all, they were real servants. They never countenanced murder, secrecy, and the like. I confess there are many black sheep amongst us, Congressman, but I trust the whole of India today to launch upon a nonviolent struggle. I trust because of my nature to rely upon the innate goodness of human nature, which perceives the truth and prevails during the crisis as if by instinct. But even if I am deceived in this, I shall not swerve, I shall not flinch. From its very inception, the Congress based its policy on peaceful methods, included Swaraj, and the subsequent generations added nonviolence. When Gadabhai entered the British Parliament, Salisbury dubbed him as a black man. But the English people defeated Salisbury and Dadabhai went to the Parliament by their vote. India was delirious with joy. These things, however, India has outgrown. It is, however, with all these things, as the background that I want Englishmen, Europeans, and all the United Nations to examine in their hearts what crime had India committed in demanding independence. I ask, is it right for you to distrust such an organization with all its background, tradition, and record of over half a century and misrepresent its endeavors before all the world by every means at your command? Is it right that by hook or by crook, aided by the foreign press, aided by the President of the USA, or even by the Generalissimo of China, who has yet to win his laurels, you should present India's struggle in shocking caricature? I have met the Generalissimo. I have known him through Madame Sheikh, who was my interpreter, and though he seemed inscrutable to me, not so Madame Sheikh, and he allowed me to read his mind through her. There is a chorus of disapproval and righteous protest all over the world against us. They say we are erring. The move is inopportune. I had great regard for British diplomacy, which has enabled them to hold the empire so long. Now it stinks in my nostrils, and others have studied that diplomacy and are putting it into practice. They may succeed in getting, through these methods, world opinion on their side for a time, but India will speak against that world opinion. She will raise her voice against all the organized propaganda. I will speak against it. Even if all the United Nations opposed me, even if the whole of India forsakes me, I will say, you are wrong. India will wrench with nonviolence her liberty from unwilling hands. I will go ahead not for India's sake alone, but for the sake of the world. Even if my eyes close before there is freedom, nonviolence will not end. They will be dealing a mortal blow to China and to Russia if they oppose the freedom of nonviolent India, which is pleading with bended knees for the fulfillment of debt long overdue. Does a creditor ever go to debtor like that? And even when India is met with such angry opposition, she says, we won't hit below the belt. We have learned sufficient gentlemanliness. We are pledged to nonviolence. I have been the author of non-embarrassment policy of the Congress, and yet today you find me talking this strong language. I say it is consistent with our honor. If a man holds me by the neck and wants to draw me, may I not struggle to free myself directly? There is no inconsistency in our position today. There are representatives of the foreign press assembled here today. Through them, I wish to say to the world that the United Powers, who somehow or other say that they have need for India, have the opportunity now to declare India free and prove their bona fides. If they miss it, they will be missing the opportunity of their lifetime, and history will record that they did not discharge their obligations to India in time and lost the battle. I want the blessings of the whole world so that I may succeed with them. I do not want the United Powers to go beyond their obvious limitations. I do not want them to accept nonviolence and disarm today. There is a fundamental difference between fascism and this imperialism which I am fighting. Do the British get from India which they hold in bondage? Think what difference it would make if India was to participate as a free ally. That freedom, if it is to come, must come today. It will have no taste left in it. Today, you who have the power to help cannot exercise it. If you can exercise it under the glow of freedom, what seems impossible today will become possible tomorrow. If India feels that freedom, she will command that freedom for China. The road for learning to Russia's help will be open. The Englishmen did not die in Malaya or on Burma soil. What shall enable us to retrieve the situation? Where shall I go and where shall I take the 40 crores of India? How is this vast mass of humanity to be aglow in the cause of world deliverance unless and until it has touched and felt freedom? Today, they have no touch of life left. It has been crushed out of them. If luster is to be put into their eyes, freedom has to come not tomorrow, but today. I have pledged that Congress and the Congress will do or die.
I would like to take a moment to thank my patrons who fund my work: Gold, Ben, DJ Aaron, Elijah, Edward, Space Captain, Myron, and Harrison. I would also like to thank those of you in the comments who suggested this video. I do my best to read every one of your comments and write down your suggestions for future videos. Thanks for watching and stay awesome.